Welcome to the Nomad Tea Festival. My name is Han Lee. I'm a Japanese certified tea master for Salon de Thé Oasis, Tea House, and Tguru, based in Montreal, Canada. Today I'll be offering you a virtual tea workshop called Demystifying Japanese Tea. First off, we'll be doing an overview of the different type of tea that is produced in Japan commercially. We'll be starting off with Shincha. Shincha is a type of green tea that is produced at the beginning of spring, or rather I should say, at the first harvest of the year. It is usually made out of Wakucha cultivar type. It's a type of cultivar that allows you to harvest earlier in the year. And this type of tea is usually produced at the beginning of April through mid-May, depending on the part of Japan. Usually more south, such as Kyushu, it is beginning of April, and all the way through mid-May tend to be around Shizuoka. It is a very prized tea, and it is considered the best tea, the most rich, complex, fresh tea among all the Japanese tea. This tea has a full of umami taste, freshness. It's very unique in terms of taste compared to any other type of Japanese tea. No matter how good is another tea, Shincha tea has that special taste that is unique because it's the first harvest of the year. Next is Sencha. Sencha is a type of green tea that is made in similar ways as a Shincha, except that because it is not the first harvest of the year anymore, so we tend to call it Sencha. But in reality, there is many types of Sencha that is produced, such as asamushi, shumushi, fukamushi. Those are different type of cooking time process that is done to the tea leaf, which creates subcategory in terms of taste. We also have Sencha oku type, which is a type of cultivar that is harvested a little bit later in the season. We are talking about maybe 2 weeks after the typical type of cultivar where we will harvest earlier. And this type of tea will give you a more rich, deep, complex note. So it is very flavory tea. And then we also have a type of Sencha that is shaded in similar ways as Gyokuro. In some part of Japan, we also call this type of Sencha kabusecha. For Sencha, as you can see here, this is a first harvest. So you will see very fine, delicate tea leaf. But if you look over here, next to it, this is what we'll be calling third harvest. And this third harvest is made in summer. So already you can see that the size of the leaf and the color of the leaf is totally different. But what's interesting, or rather what you should pay attention to, is that here you have Sencha type of tea, but it's actually made in China. So Chinese don't really drink this type of tea, but they do produce it for the purpose of exporting, and then companies will buy them to actually make blend out of it. But there are some of these type of tea that is sold as authentic Japanese tea. Of course, you can clearly see the difference in terms of sizing and quality. So first harvest, authentic Japanese tea leaf. Third harvest, summer, already bigger and a little bit more dull gray. And then you can clearly see the giant size of cutting here. It is about an inch long. And here we don't really care about the season anymore. It's really made in the purpose of mass production so that other countries can use them to blend or whatever they wish to do with. Next, we have a Bancha here. Bancha is what you could call an autumn harvest green tea, but actually it starts off in mid-August all the way through September. So what we have here is a first harvest of good quality Bancha, and as you can see, the leaves are a little bit bigger than first harvest high quality Sencha, but nicer green than a third harvest of summer Sencha, and also a smaller leaf than here. And of course, it is much better than so-called Sencha from China. In terms of taste, you will have a tea that is stronger than a Sencha, more rich in a way, but less flowery, less complex. I feel that it tends to be a little bit more nutty, maybe malty taste also. There's less caffeine in it compared to a Sencha, so it's a tea that you can drink more casually. In terms of value, it is way less expensive, even though it's a first harvest, than a Sencha tea, of course. We tend to say that it is 3-4 times cheaper to produce Bancha than a Sencha. Next, we have Gyokuro. Gyokuro is also a type of first harvest green tea from spring, but in this case, the tree itself is shaded for 3 to 4 weeks before we harvest the leaf. By doing such, you will have a tea that is very rich, creamy, buttery flavor, what we call umami. And the Japanese consider this like a champagne of the tea. In fact, this tea is actually a control name, and it is originated from the region of Yemen. So, next tea is Kukicha. Kukicha, also known as twig tea, is a type of Japanese green tea that is usually made of bits and leaf, what you might call leftover, but there are actually different quality, different type of Kukicha. So in the central region of Japan, we tend to produce Kukicha with different harvests for different price, obviously, and then the tea would be tasting more nutty, roasty, a little bit of creamy, like malty taste, and obviously herbal, like grassy. But there is another type of Kukicha that is made in the region of Yemen, and it's called Kerigane Kukicha. Now, Kerigane Kukicha is a premium type of Kukicha that's made out of Gyokuro leaves. So what you actually have in a Kerigane Kukicha is leftover leaf of a Kukicha, so more like the broken parts, plus the actual nerve of the leaf rather than some twig section. And Kukicha is usually composed of a few harvests, such as spring, summer, and autumn, depending on whatever they have, and of course, whatever you're willing to pay. But in the case of this Kukicha Kerigane, you have the stem of the of the Gyokuro leaf, Gyokuro pieces, and you have first harvest of summer and first harvest of autumn leaf to create a very complex, rich taste, reminiscing of malt, nut, very creamy, fresh feeling, a little hint of mango even. So it's a very, very rich, complex tea that you can have for a very, very affordable price. Honestly, this is one of my favorite Japanese tea, Kukicha Kerigane. Next, we have a roasted tea called Hojicha. So Hojicha basically is green tea that is roasted. Here, what you have is actually the roasted stem of Gyokuro. And the taste is more rich, more complex than traditional, standard, commercial Hojicha, where you will have leaf oftenly from summer or autumn harvest with their stem and their nerves. So it's more random taste in the sense that it's less intense than this one. And Hojicha tend to give you nutty, chocolatey flavor, a little bit creamy. So for those who wants a tea that is totally different from traditional herbal, grassy green tea, Hojicha will give you that. Also, what's interesting about Hojicha is that it doesn't really contain any caffeine due to the whole roasting process. So it's actually very good to drink in the afternoon or later in the evening. We also have Hojicha in powder form, and some call this Hojicha matcha in the sense that the Hojicha is grinded into fine powder just like matcha. The word matcha, by the way, in Japanese in general means powder tea, but of course there's actual ceremonial matcha, different grades, and cooking matcha, and so on. Usually what we do with Hojicha powder is we will make food with it or latte drinks. It is not common to drink Hojicha in a ceremonial way because it does not taste that interesting to the consumer point of view. It's very different basically. You can also do blend with the Hojicha. So in this case, you have Hojicha Ganmai, and basically you have roasted rice grain mixed with the Hojicha stem, and the taste will give you a more creamy flavor. Hojicha Ganmai is derived from a famous common tea called Ganmaicha. So Ganmaicha is basically a green tea composed of the same roasted rice grain. More specifically, we use in Japan barley grain, not actual rice. And we will roast it, and sometimes it does happen that you have a barley that will pop like a popcorn. So sometimes people call this tea, the Ganmaicha, popcorn tea because it has that popcorn taste. Ganmaicha is very commonly served during Japanese meal because it is less concentrated in terms of caffeine. It is more complex, rich, but it doesn't have those delicate note. It's just rich in the sense that it's more strong bowl that accompanies better food. But if you eat something that is very strong flavor, then obviously you could go with the Ganmai Hojicha Ganmai. Next, we have matcha. Matcha literally means tea powder, but obviously there is many different quality. Cooking grade, even lower than cooking grade, that is really random for whatever purpose. There is everyday drinking grade, ceremonial grade. In the ceremonial grade, you have different type of matcha such as kuradashi, which mean that the leaves of the matcha before being transformed into matcha is aged for 6 months to 2 years on average to enhance all the flavor. You also have koicha, which is a type of matcha that is meant for drinking in a more thick way. Nonetheless, it all starts from tencha. Tencha is a type of green tea leaf that is shaded for 2-3 weeks before being harvested, similar way as a Gyokuro. Once that process is done, you will obviously cook the leaf and so on, and then you will chop the leaf in very small little segment, unlike traditional green tea leaf that is more long, like needle type. And the purpose of chopping the tencha in this form is to allow the grinding of the leaf to be more easy, more even, so that you will have a matcha that is fine and perfect. So how does it work is that, let's say you have a mill, a stone mill, and then you would put the tencha leaf into this little hole here, at which point you will be turning the mill, and then it will crush the leaf into fine powder. It will come out from here. So this is the theory, but in reality you need an industrial metallic machine that would spin thousands of turns per hours, and basically you would need 1 hour to produce on average 40 grams of matcha. So it's not something that we can actually do it for fun manually with a stone mill to enjoy a fresh cup of matcha. And so that's one of the reasons why matcha powder is so expensive, because it requires a lot of time and obviously a lot of energy, even electronically speaking, to produce matcha. In the old days, sure, you would have some people who would produce matcha manually like this, but of course the quality is not the same as today's equipment, modern age with a mechanic machine. Next, we have Wakucha. Wakucha is pretty much the only black tea that is produced in Japan. In order to produce decent Wakucha, decent black tea, it is required to use cultivar that is not the typical ones to produce green tea, because Japan has been trying to produce black tea for many years without success, because during that timeline they were trying to use their traditional green tea cultivar to produce black tea, and the taste turned out awful. And throughout the trial and error, they found out that using different type of cultivar that is a descendant of Chinese black tea, it is possible to make a very, very good black tea. In terms of taste, it's more fruity, doesn't really have any bitterness when you steep it, and very, very rich in the mouth. It's quite a different feeling compared to Indian or Chinese black tea. The cultivar, by the way, that is most suited to produce black tea is a type that is called Beni. This one is from Yemen, so it's very, very rich in terms of flavor, very good. And here we have Hojicha. Hojicha is a fermented type of tea, like the Chinese pu'er. Many years ago, as in hundreds of years ago, there was a tea farmer who went back to China to study about pu'er, and when he came back to Japan, he created a completely different process, what you might call more scientific way to produce fermented tea. In this case, it follows a very specific way and recipe to produce very stable tea within 3 months, and after that it's ready to drink. Fermented Japanese tea tastes nothing like the Chinese style of fermented tea. It is not earthy, woody in terms of taste. It's actually very fruity, almost astringent taste, acidic taste almost. In fact, it actually reminds you very much of tamarind, the actual beans fruit. And so it's actually very interesting in terms of taste, but don't expect it to taste anything like the traditional Chinese pu'er. This tea for a while almost disappeared in Japan because in the modern time the new generation couldn't really appreciate its taste. So at some point in the early 20th century, we only had one farm left who used to produce this tea, but now we're back to 7-8 producers. So it's pretty interesting as a tea to drink. So these are the common tea that is produced in Japan, but obviously Japanese do produce many more type of tea. Some is micro production, some is just less famous because of its quality. For example, you have Konacha. Konacha is basically leftover teas from different harvests. Sometimes they're blended, sometimes they're sold in pure form. For example, you might have a producer that is selling Konacha, meaning leftover tea, from his Gyokuro production. So if you get a hand on those, it's an awesome tea for bargain prices, many times cheaper than the actual Gyokuro. But in general, Konacha is really bits of tea here and there, and it's a kind of tea that you will often find in Japanese restaurant for free when you eat. Sometimes they even grind the Konacha tea into fine powder so that they give you a so-called matcha tea to drink in Japanese restaurant for free, obviously. Japanese also do experimental tea production for oolong tea, but so far I've never really come across a producer that makes enough to sell commercially. There are also stories about Japanese white tea. I've only came across white tea in the sense that the cultivar, it has a very whitish color hue, so the leaf itself looks very white or gold, and when you steep it, you wet the tea leaf, then you can clearly see the difference of this particular cultivar compared to traditional green tea cultivar. So this is what the Japanese call white tea. There's not really much more tea that is produced in Japan other than those type. There is an exception though, is that they do have, when it comes to green tea, you have green tea that is traditionally made or more commonly made by steaming, cooking the leaf in a steam form. This is the traditional Japanese tea. But there's also more rare is green tea that is roasted, pan roasted, like the Chinese style. It is less common because the Japanese back then in time chose the steam version for its health nutriment, because they believe that by roasting the leaf you would lose more nutriment. So they chose the steam type. Among the famous type of roasted green tea, you obviously have the Hojicha, which is a classic, and it is considered one of the best top 10 green tea in Japan. So that's pretty much all you have in terms of Japanese green tea. So thank you for listening to me. In part 2 of our workshop, we'll be covering teawares. So first off, what you have here is the most traditional type of Kyushu teapot. Kyushu basically means traditional Japanese teapot. So in this case, you have a teapot that is made out of clay. And as you can see here, you have a filter here that is made by punching holes through the clay before the cooking process, so that you have a natural filtering system. And the holes are a little bit big in the sense that in some case the tea leaf may pass through. So some people will say it is okay to have a little bit of tea leaf in your mouth when you drink the tea because it's natural, just like the tea itself. But some perfectionists will say that the bits of leaf that goes into your mouth is not pleasant, so then they want a filter that is more perfect. In such a case, you have the modern type of teapot. So here you have 3 styles. Style number 1, the most common and affordable type that has a natural basket. And this basket will hold most of your tea leaf bits and such. The only problem is that it is a very poor quality type of filtering system, because the basket itself during a washing process may deform and break, because you have to scrub through this, and obviously in time it will get damaged and it will break. But other than that, it's very affordable and is a very fun teapot to use, because it still have that traditional feeling, and it usually comes in many designs and colors. So it's a fun teapot that is very fashionable, if you might say so. Secondly, we have more traditional form, but with a natural membrane. So very, very fine membrane filter that will stop everything. And this gives you pretty much the best steeping teaware to have, and it still have that good Japanese vibe, very traditional painting design. It's very good, but it's a little bit more pricey than the first one. Thirdly, you have this type that is an open concept, where you still have the metal mesh filtering membrane, but it's open, so you can actually see the leaf floating inside. And me personally, I prefer this type because I like to see the tea leaf and enjoy everything about it, not just the actual tea to drink. So this I prefer. It's more zen, simple, and you can enjoy the whole process of drinking by seeing the leaf itself. You also have this, less common, very rare in fact, that you see somebody use it, because it's much more difficult to handle. It's called shibori dashi, and it's a little bit like a Chinese gaiwan. Of course, it comes from the actual concept of a gaiwan. Shibori dashi tend to be more flat than the Chinese version that is more tall or more round. The problem with this is that tea leaf tend to still be able to pass through. So in my point of view, it's cute, it's fun, but it's not the best teaware to use. So actually, it's very rare to see somebody use one. And lastly, my preferred way to make tea and drink tea. This is a technique that I have created myself. And so instead of using all of these traditional foam, I'm going to use something much more modern. Firstly, you have a cup, like a fair cup, the Chinese fair cup to share tea. And then we're going to use a mesh filter. And then we put the usual amount of tea leaf that you would put in any other form of teaware. Pour the water in. Let it steep a bit. This, by the way, is a Shincha, first harvest from Yame, and it's a lovely tea. One of the aspects that you can see from a Shincha is that the liquor is much more rich in green color, and also it will tend to give you more of a milky texture. So at 70 °C for about 1 minute of steeping, we remove this and use a wine glass to enjoy the tea. Now, why did I choose a wine glass? It wasn't me who invented this concept. Actually, it's a very famous French chef named Joël Robuchon. About 2 years ago, he worked with our garden from Yeme to find a new way to serve tea at his fancy restaurant. And so after many trial and errors, he found out that actually using a wine glass gives you pretty much the best result for smelling the tea, drinking, enjoying the tea, and also visually speaking, it's just awesome. Because if I were to use a more traditional cup, all you see is liquor inside the cup, but you don't really see the color, the quality of the tea. On the other hand, with a wine glass, you obviously can see through everything, and then you can really enjoy its color on top of its taste. And on top of that, a wine glass is designed in a way that you can actually smell before you drink, and at which point you sip. Awesome, very fresh, very rich. And so you see, it may not be traditional, but this is the actual trend right now. Even in Japan, you start to see some tea house offering you tea. In the case of Japan, what I've seen so far is a tea house that make cold brew and then bottle them in wine bottle. And then when you go in, you would order a bottle for 25 to thousands of dollars US, and then you would sit down and being served just like somebody would serve you wine in a wine cup, and then you would drink the tea like that. And like I said, the feeling may not be traditional, but if you've never tried it, you should try once in your life and enjoy the tea like this. The color is simply magnificent, and the smell of it is divine. Of course, taste. I'll let the tea talk when you make your own cup. But basically, this modern technique that I've combined is really an interesting way to go when you want to enjoy the tea itself and not necessarily the Zen moment with traditional teaware. So next, what we have is Teaware to make matcha. So basically what you have is that you have a shashaku, you have a chawan, a tea bowl, a chasen, it's a whisk made out of bamboo, and a naoshi, it's a little, let's call it a device to allow your whisk to dry and reshape itself so that every time you use it, your whisk looks like new in the sense that it's well open and even so that you can whisk better. And so what do we do with all of this is basically we would put in a ceremonial form about 2 grams of matcha, so about 2 spoons like this. Each spoon is basically equal to a tip of my finger. So 2 times like this into a matcha bowl. And then we would add 60 milliliter of water. So that's like 1.5 ounces, 2 ounces of water. That's really not much water. But having little water allows you to better whisk what's in there and create a nice, thick, rich foam. The foam is basically like the crema from an espresso. Basically, you force the oxygen into the tea, the water, and then create a foam, and that foam contains all the flavor, the richness, the smoothness of the tea. And so this is what you basically need to produce matcha traditionally in a ceremonial way. Of course, you can always use electric whisk, frother, whatever, to do it if you're too lazy or you don't have the skill to whisk with this. But basically, this is the essential. So thank you very much for listening and watching my virtual tea workshop. So on this, I leave you be.